Special issues with verbs. Verbs have more variety than the other parts of speech. While a noun is a noun, a verb has tense, voice, mood, and some forms that can be perplexing. Remember that verbs are either action words or state of being words. The most common state of being verb is the verb to be. I am, you are, he is, she is. State of being verbs are also called linking verbs. In this chapter, we will talk about tense, voice, mood, and other qualities of verbs. In Chapter 1, we talked about verb tenses. Verb tenses refer to time. Since verbs are primarily action words, tense refers to when something was done. Common tenses include present tense, happening now, past tense, already happened, future tense, will happen. However, it isn't quite that simple. There are actually 12 tenses in the English language. There are 6 main tenses, and each of them has a matching tense called the progressive. The 6 main tenses in English can be put on a timeline. So you have, this is the furthest in the past. Past perfect, past. Present perfect, present. Future perfect, future. Let's see how they are used. Present tense, used for something happening now. I walk to work. Present perfect, used for something that happened in the past and may still be happening. I have walked to work every day this week. Past tense, used for something that happened already. I walked to work this morning. Past perfect, used for something that happened in the past before something else that also happened in the past. I had stopped to buy coffee before I arrived at work. So used of past perfect and then past tense. Future, used for something that will happen in the future. I will walk to work tomorrow. Future perfect, used for something that will happen in the future before something else in the future. I will have walked to work by the time you get there in your car. Each of these 6 tenses has a matching tense called progressive, which is simply the form with an ing at the end. Present tense, I play. Progressive, I am playing. Past tense, I played. Progressive, I was playing. Present perfect, I have played. Present perfect progressive, I have been playing. Past perfect, I had played. Past perfect progressive, I had been playing. Future tense, I will play. Progressive, I will be playing. Future perfect, I will have played. Future perfect progressive, I will have been playing. Change the verb tense in the following sentences to the tense in parentheses. I eat dinner at 6. I will eat dinner. I danced in New York. I have danced in New York. I will be going to Paris next year. I had gone to school with my sister. I will have worked here for 10 years. So those are the answers. Tense trouble. Some of the tenses can cause problems. For example, if you are talking about something that happened in a book you read or a movie you saw, you should use the present tense rather than the past tense. You may have seen it or read it in the past, but it still exists. In this book, the main character is looking for his real mother. He has not seen her in 20 years. Since she gave him up for adoption, he finally meets her and they begin to establish a mother-son relationship. In the above example, he is looking for his mother and he meets her, so those are present tense. However, in the past, she gave him up for adoption and he saw her in the past, even in the story. So we use past tenses for past actions for those verbs. However, if you are talking about something you did last week, do not use present tense. Wrong. I go to the movies last week. I see my cousin who I haven't seen in a long time. We decide to have dinner together and then I go home. Correct. I went to the movies last week and I saw my cousin whom I haven't seen in a long time. We decided to have dinner together and after dinner I went home. So when you are talking about something that happened in the past, use past tense. Past perfect if you are talking about two things that happened in the past, but one of them clearly happened before the other. You need to use different tenses for the verbs. For example, Mary told me she went to see the movie last night. Both verbs are in the past tense. However, Mary went to the movies before she told you about it. So you need to use the past perfect for the earlier event. The correct way to say this sentence would be, Mary had seen the movie before she told me about it. So had seen, the past perfect, is one event happening in the past before another event happening in the past. So Mary told me that she had gone to see that movie. So had gone is the past perfect, and always use the past perfect first before another event in the past. Irregular verb tenses. What do we mean by verb forms? Well, let's look at the word play. If we want to use the verb play in the past tense, we would make it played. Since most verbs add ed to make the past tense, we call those verbs regular verbs. Here are some regular verbs: kick, want, talk, show, pick, cook, pass, weigh. Then when we put these verbs into the past tense, kicked, wanted, walked, showed, picked, cooked, passed, weighed. Verbs that already end in e, just add d. They are also considered regular verbs: baked, dated. Verbs that end in a short vowel sound and then a consonant often double the consonant to create the past tense: hopped, planned. These are also considered regular verbs because they end in ed. Some verbs stay the same in the past tense or take on a whole new form. These verbs are irregular. There are actually three forms of a verb. Regular verbs are the same and in the second and third forms. So regular verbs always has ed. A past participle. So a past participle is the verb to have plus past tense. Have played. Present tense. Set. Right now I set my book down on the table. Past tense. Set. A minute ago I set my book down on this table. Past participle. Have set. I have often set my book down on this table. The verbs burst and cost also stay the same in all three forms. However, there are many irregular verbs, and the only way to learn them is to memorize them and use them. So I had to memorize all of these verbs when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And so I remember it being what a pain in the neck to have to memorize all this. And I remember the teacher had flashcards, and we all had to make index cards. So even native speakers have to memorize these irregular verbs. And if you go to YouTube, there are verb songs that will help you memorize these verbs. So just go to YouTube and put in irregular verb songs, and then a whole bunch of songs will show up, and they will really help you memorize these verbs. Began, begin, began, begun. Bite, bit, bitten. Blow, blew, blown. Break, broke, broken. Bring, brought, brought. Build, built, built. Buy, bought, bought. Choose, chose, chosen. Come, came, come. Cut, cut, cut. Do, did, done. Draw, drew, drawn. Drink, drank, drunk. Eat, ate, eaten. Fall, fell, fallen. Fly, flew, flown. Forgive, forgave, forgiven. Freeze, froze, frozen. Get, got, gotten. Give, gave, given. go, went, gone, grow, grew, grown, hide, hid, hidden, hit, hit, know, knew, known, lay, laid, laid, lead, led, led, leave, left, left, lend, lent, lent, let, let, lie, lay, lain, light, lit, lit, lose, lost, lost, ride, rode, ridden, ring, rang, rung, rise, rose, risen, run, ran, run, see, saw, seen, seek, sought, sought, set, set, shrink, shrank, shrunk, sing, sang, song, sink, sank, sunk, sit, sat, sat, spoke, speak, spoke, spoken, spend, spent, spent, stand, stood, stood, steal, stole, stolen, swim, swam, swum, swing, swung, swung, take, took, taken, teach, taught, taught, tear, tore, torn, tell, told, told, think, thought, thought, throw, threw, thrown, wear, wore, worn, write, wrote, written. And so you just have to practice these verbs in order to get the hang of them. There's no way about it. You just have to memorize them. Verbs of being. We have previously talked about verbs of being. To review, verbs of being are sometimes called linking verbs because they act as an equal sign, joining the words on either side of them. The most common linking verb is the verb to be. Note that to be is a linking verb only when it is the main verb. Sometimes the verb to be is a helping verb, changing the tense of a main verb. I am a writer. Am is a linking verb, joining I and writer. I equals writer. I am playing chess. Am is a helping verb. Playing is the main verb. I does not equal chess. There are a couple of things about linking verbs that can cause problems. But before we talk about these, let's list some other linking verbs. To be isn't the only one. These verbs are also linking verbs, some or all of the time. Look, taste, smell, sound, grow, remain, become, feel. See if you can imagine the verbs in the first sentence in each pair as equal signs, linking the word before them with the word after them. Then in the second sentence in each pair, see how the verb is not a linking verb, but an action verb. So here you have a linking verb. Here you have action verb. Look is a linking verb. The cake looks good. Here you have look as an action verb. I look at the cake. The pizza tastes good. Here you have the action. I taste the pizza. The coffee smells fresh. I smell coffee. The music sounds loud. I sound the horn. The room grows quiet. The flowers grow tall. It remains noisy. She remained in her seat. It became clear to me. I feel sad about that. I feel the cat's fur. Adjectives after linking verbs. As we discussed way back in Chapter 1, adverbs are used to modify verbs. However, adverbs modify only action verbs. We use adjectives, not adverbs, after linking verbs. If you look at the examples in the previous section, you will see that the words after the linking verbs are adjectives. Good, fresh, loud, quiet, noisy, clear, sad. Here are a few examples of sentences with action verbs followed by adverbs. So here, she plays piano well. So well is an adverb that modifies the verb play. He talks very quietly. Quietly is an adverb that modifies talks. He walked up the stairs hurriedly. So hurriedly modifies the verb walked. The adjective after the linking verb doesn't cause any trouble. Here is a case where it can cause a problem. I feel bad about this. Many people say I feel badly, but that is not correct. Badly is an adverb. Bad is an adjective. and should follow the linking verb feel. What if you feel good? Can you use well, an adverb? Yes, you can. Although well is an adverb, you could use it to mean a state of health. So in this case, either good or well is fine. Pronouns after linking verbs. In Chapter 6, we talked about pronoun cases. After a linking verb, we use a nominative case pronoun. In this instance, the linking verb will usually be the to be verb. After a to be verb, you use the pronoun you would use as a subject, not as an object. So after a linking verb, you can say, yes, this is she. It is they who are coming with us. It is I who played the trick on you. Does that sound a little formal to you? Yes, I know it does, but I would recommend if you are writing something important, you do. You do it correctly. So this is very British English. Yes, that is she. It is they who are coming after us. It is I who played the trick on you. So basically, we would use a subject pronoun after a linking verb. And I think people use this usually in very formal English and also when they're trying to say something important or emphasis. Passive and active voice. In addition to having tense, verbs have voice, active and passive. These two voices are pretty easy to understand. In active voice, the subject of the sentence is performing the action of the verb. For example, she drove to school. In passive voice, the subject does not perform the action of the verb, but receives the action. For example, she was driven to school by her brother. She is still the subject, and was driven is still the verb. But the sentence is passive because she doesn't drive or didn't drive. She receives the action. So use active voice most of the time in your writing. It makes your writing much stronger. There are a couple of instances in which you use passive voice. Use passive voice when you don't know who performed the action. For example, the school was built in 1960. Use passive voice when it isn't important who performed the action or you don't want to say who performed the action. For example, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. It doesn't matter who gave him the award. The important thing is that he received it. However, perhaps the President of the United States gave him the award, and that is the important thing. In that case, you might want to use the active voice and say the President of the United States gave him the Medal of Honor. What is subjunctive mood? Verbs don't just have tense and voice. They also have mood. Most of the time, mood doesn't pose a problem, but sometimes they can. There are generally considered to be three moods: indicative mood, imperative mood, subjunctive mood. Indicative mood is used most of the time. Regular old statements are indicative. Imperative mood includes imperative sentences, which are commands. In other words, tell me a story, for example. Subjunctive moods is one that can be a little confusing, especially in English. Subjunctive mood is used a lot in other languages, like Spanish or French. And the subjunctive mood in French and Spanish are used to indicate extreme emotion, something you really, really want. But in English, subjunctive mood is used with commands and recommendations and for things that are not true. And in Old English, a subjunctive mood was used in a lot more cases. But now in English, subjunctive mood is disappearing and is used not so often anymore. And so subjunctive mood is an old tense or an old mode that is disappearing. Just a few old lingering ways we still use, like long live the queen. That is long live the king. You could tell that came from Britain, but that is an example of subjunctive mood. So here are some more examples. I demand that you be there to answer questions. In this sentence, you be there is subjunctive. Generally, you would say, I demand that you are there. I recommend that she cook dinner for the party on Friday. In this sentence, she cook is in the subjunctive. Generally, you would say, I recommend that she cooks dinner for the party. But then if you're saying it as a command, then you would say, I recommend that she cook dinner. Most of the time, we don't have a problem with the use of the subjunctive. It just sounds right to us. Oh, it doesn't sound right to English, to ESL students, but for native speakers, it just sounds right to us. This is why I recommend this grammar book for native speakers of English. Here is where some people have problems with the subjunctive. Your clues here are clauses that are introduced with as if, as though, and if. What follows is generally not true. Another clue is a clause following the verb wish. Here are some examples. And in other grammar books, this is known as the hypothetical wish, or hypotheticals with modals. So if I wish I were rich. It is not correct in this case to say I wish I was rich. You need the subjunctive because you aren't rich. It's hypothetical. Notice that although the sentence is present tense, subjunctive looks like the past tense. If I were rich, I would buy a big mansion. It is not correct to say if I was rich. You need the subjective because you aren't rich. She acts as though she were the boss. We use subjunctive here because she isn't the boss. She just acts that way. So he speaks as if he were from Britain, but he knows he is American. We use subjunctive because he is not from Britain. In the present tense subjunctive, you see how we actually use the past tense form of the verb. If we want to use subjunctive in the past tense, we go further back and use the past perfect. If I had known you were coming, I would have baked you a cake, not if I knew you were coming. And so if you're going to rewrite the following sentences correctly, if I were you, I would call them. If I were company president, I would do things differently. She looks as if she were tired. She acts as if she were a queen. No change necessary. I recommend that you be there for the meeting. I sure wish I were rich like you. I told her I thought she should be there. So some of them are correct, some of them are not. So using strong verbs. When you write, you want to use strong verbs that usually tell what is going on. You will then need fewer adverbs and adjectives. One of the verbs you want to limit is the to be verb, which is not very interesting. So I always tell students to try to avoid using is in your thesis statement and try to find other verbs instead of is. Boy, is that a challenge for my students. So instead of saying she is tall, you would say she stands over 6 feet tall. Instead of saying it is a rainy day, you would say the rain is pouring down. Instead of the diamond is very pretty, you would say the diamond sparkles on her finger. Just be aware that overusing verbs like is or has can be boring in your writing. You want to be more precise in your descriptions. And so I always tell I remember when I was teaching 9th grade English,